OP12 all released into our hands, and the ban list being announced and active on Friday. It's time to go ahead and start theory crafting and seeing what decks that we are going to have to look out for, and there will be no better opportunity to do so and see exactly what players are thinking mentality-wise than with Bologna Regionals that's happening this weekend. So in this video, we're going to take a look at 5 different leaders and decks that I think that you might need to look out for without talking about some of the obvious contenders that are going to be there. My name's Ben Fitzpatrick, I'm a TCG caster, and that means I just love talking about them. So let's do that right now. But before we go into those leaders and decks, if you do enjoy this video, please be sure to drop a like rating on it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like, I know over 90% of the people that watch my videos have not done. So if you're coming back on the regular, you might as well subscribe. It is completely free and it helps me out a ton as we try and go to that road to 500 subscribers by the end of the year. While you're down there as well, drop a comment down below with some of the leaders that you're looking to try out in the OP12 post-ban list format, and also check out my link tree in the description to find me on other social platforms. You'll also notice that in the description there is a link to the One Piece Card Game Central Twitch channel, because that is where the coverage of the Bologna Regionals will be being broadcast to this weekend at the time of recording and uploading of this video. And you never know, you might see and hear a couple of familiar faces and voices during the weekend. But yes, OP12 and post-ban list format, always a really interesting and exciting time in the One Piece card game in terms of trying to build those decks. What leaders that were maybe a little neglected in a few formats ago are going to rise back up to the top, and which leaders are going to stay very, very strong. There's one that's going to be in this list that is going to be of that caliber, couple extras that will be brought back from formats previous, and one that we really need to have a big conversation about. Like I said as well, before we actually get into these decks, I know I'm stalling a little bit, apologies for that, but I just wanted to make it perfectly obvious that we're not talking about some of the immediately obvious good leaders and decks when compared to what we saw in Japan, okay? So there's not going to be any mention of Zoro in this video. There's not going to be any mention of Rayleigh in this video. I'm also not 100% sure how strong Rayleigh is going to be in the new format, depending on the influence of a certain Navy Admiral that's coming back into the format. We'll talk about him towards the end of the video, don't you worry. But there's not going to be too much discussion of leaders and decks like that. We want to talk about decks and see decks that are either coming back into meta contention, were in meta contention already and are now getting stronger, and things of the like. So, in line with that and in vein with that, we're going to talk about Bonnie to start things off. Now, Bonnie was in my list, I believe, of decks to watch out for in the European Championship Finals, because she's just very good, generically, right? Mono green leader, the queen of green control, leader ability to on your opponent's attack, pay 1 Don, and rest either a leader or character and stop them from attacking. Especially when you've got a format right now that seems quite attack heavy and attack central, right? You've got Roronoa Zoro leader coming out that wants to attack twice, potentially even thrice in a turn, with a combination of that Luffy will be the King of the Pirates event. So swinging into a character, using its activate main ability to restand, then swing into lead, and then Luffy's King of the Pirates swing into lead again. That Bonnie leader effect, when timed very nicely or played against an opponent that maybe just missequences their turn, could be really punishing. And of course, Bonnie didn't lose anything. Hody Jones wasn't banned or restricted in any way, shape, or form in the list update, and gaining some new tools in the likes of the Mihawk blocker, the Bonnie blocker secret rare, and the Koshiro as well. So a lot of extra tools that Jewelry Bonnie was granted here. So this deck list and the list that you're going to be seeing for the remainder of these videos as well are just example deck lists. They're not necessarily the correct or the exact 50 cards that we're going to see in Bologna this weekend. It's just a general idea of what builds might potentially look like. So here, you've got your value plays, the likes of Cavendish here, searches with Bonnie and Kid and Killer. I have seen some Bonnie lists cut Kid and Killer in its entirety as well. Let me know down in the comments what you think about that. We've got 8-cost Captain Kid, of course, as just the big defender and the big taunting wall that decks and some decks will struggle to really get through. Rayleigh is one of those that I think is going to really struggle to get through Eustace Captain Kid. You're going to have to generate and give a lot of resources and effort to try and put even one swing into the Kid, let alone multiple throughout the course of the turn. So I think this is going to be really, really helpful in this format as well. You've got your finishers in the likes of Hody Jones. You've got your protectors in Toshigi. Koshiro now as well, that's coming from OP12. Carrot as a stun piece with 10-cost Doflamingo that has started to come back into the format as well. I've been wondering when this card was going to make its way back into Bonnie decks. Looks like OP12 is now the time to do so. You've also got a new counter event potentially with the Dead Man's Game as well. So Bonnie just looks like it's really, really well rounded in this format. A very, very strong leader, and is one that, me personally, I'm definitely going to be interested in looking to play through OP12. I've liked the look of Bonnie as a leader and as a deck for a long, long time. I have finally now started to pull the trigger and get a load of these cards that I was potentially missing. I am missing Toshigi's still, though, which I didn't think that I was. I checked, I bought a load of the cards, and then I checked my OP10 binder, and I saw that there was only one lone Toshigi. It was the 4 smokers that I had instead. And obviously with Punk Hazard and everyone being shambles around, or most people being shambles around and in different bodies, it looked a little confusing to me. So that's why I thought I had 4 Toshigis. I don't. So I still need to get more of these, but that's a me problem. That's a job for me to worry about in the coming days leading up to the debut of OP12 on the Voyage Diaries series as well, which is on the channel. So Bonnie, I think, is going to be great. It's going to be a really, really solid leader in this format. Is it going to win Bologna? I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to wait and see till Sunday. Leader number 2 that we're going to talk about is a returning leader, and that is Shanks. We didn't see really much, if any, of Shanks during the OP11 days. Saw a little bit of it maybe dotted around in OP10, and of course it did get that support with a starter deck in the sort of reprint wave that we got, but it didn't really give any immediate lasting impact, at least not straight away. Now, however, with what has been dubbed as kind of a Lucci-like build of Shanks, focusing on a little bit more of removal, the red-haired pirate is starting to make a splash again. We've obviously got a lot of the original core cards that we had, our Utas to go ahead and search, some 2Ks in Hongo and Lime Juice, with Lime Juice also working as a pseudo Diable Jambe-like effect. Lucky Roo as one of the blockers of choice, a card that I'm really, really a fan of in the Red-Haired engine. We've got Ben Beckmans, we've got Rush Shanks, Rayleighs, Gum Gum Firefist Pistol Red Hawks, Divine Departures, the like. We've got a lot of stuff that is still in the package and in the engine. We do have a new card as well from OP12 that has come in to the deck, and that is 4-cost Blocker Shanks, the card that on your opponent's attack essentially allows you to have an extra leader ability for the cost of a card in hand. You can give one of your opponent's leader or character cards minus 2,000 power during this turn. A really, really nice card. And of course, it is a 4-cost 6k blocker to help beef up and be a little bit stronger than Lucky Roo is. Of course, Lucky Roo, it's kind of needed, and its kind of reason for being in this deck for half the point is actually just to go into the bin and just to be KO'd. so that you can trigger the pop effect from it. But Shanks is a really, really good new piece of support. We've also got to talk about a piece of support that has been brought in from that starter deck. I mentioned in one of the very first videos on my channel when we started covering One Piece and we started getting back into content creation as well, was how underwhelmed that I felt by the Shanks starter deck. Well, it looks like all of a sudden those pieces are starting to make a little bit more relevance here. With 6-cost blocker Uta, 6-cost 4,000 power, which becomes a 2-cost in hand if you have a character on board with 10,000 power or more. I still feel that maybe it's a little bit difficult to try and navigate its place on the board, so it is backed up by the fact that it is also a 2k counter. I think that's probably where it's going to be used at its most likely range, but there is also the situation on a turn where you've just 10-cost Shanksed, and on the next turn, if you can't chain a second one and you want to, say, go ahead and Rayleigh on that turn, you can Rayleigh and then blocker Uta to give yourself that extra little bit of protection. The other issue that you do have as well with that card, and I said it in that video as well, talking about ST23, is that it's not searchable in this deck, right? This 6-cost blocker Uta is only a film type. It's not Redhead Pirates type or anything like that. And the 1-cost Uta Searcher doesn't also grab film cards. So maybe a little bit awkward to dig out of the deck, but maybe not necessarily a card that you're inherently digging for. But as you can see, there is a lot of power reduction going on here. There's a lot of KO outlets going on here in this example list. We've also obviously still got a copy of the 7-cost Newgate in here as well, which can pop 5k characters or less. So a really, really interesting new variation of Shanks. And I've been grabbing my Silver's Rayleigh secret rares over the past week or so because I've had a feeling that this deck was going to be strong again. So we'll see how strong it's going to go this weekend, but definitely a contender, I think, for sure. The next contender is a new leader in its entirety, and that is Mono Blue Kuzan. Mono Blue Kuzan is a really cool leader. Has the effect that whenever a Navy card forces you to trash a card out of hand, you can draw a card to replace it. So what you'll see from a lot of these cards, particularly from OP12, is that they will have a trash cost to activate their on-plays. So for Sengoku, for Kuzan, for Borsalino, for Gap, for example, all of these effects force you to trash a card out from hand. But that is because it triggers the Kuzan effect to immediately replace them. There's a lot of great pieces that we've got here. Sengoku we've just touched on. This is a 2-card searcher for Navy. Checks top 5 and it grabs 2 cards into hand, as opposed to just the one that the 1-cost Tashigi grabs. And also gets you an extra card because you are trashing one to activate that on-play search effect. So Sengoku, a really, really good card. 6-cost Kuzan freezes something down. 7-cost Sakazuki on play allows you to draw 2 cards if your leader has the Navy type, and on activate main once per turn. When you trash a card from hand, you can give Arrested Don to your leader as well, so really, really nice. The 8-cost Gap to be able to play out another one of your Navy bodies out from hand. Again, trashing one to trigger the leader effect. There's a lot to like about the character support in this deck. We've also got a couple of characters that were previously printed in the game that are starting to see their place now. We've got Suru in this example list. We've got Aramaki in this example list, a card that basically nobody expected was ever going to see the light of competitive play. Now all of a sudden is pretty usable as an 8-cost 8k blocker that allows you to boost itself by plus 3,000 if you trash one from hand and bottom deck a 2-cost or less character on the board. And then Borsalino as well, which saw a little bit of play in Sakazuki towards the mid to late days of the deck to be able to bottom deck something as well. You've also obviously got access to things like Red Rock and Gravblade Raging Tiger. Interesting that there's no Murakamo Sword in this deck here as well, but I suppose there's not as much cost reduction in the blue side of Navy. That is more reserved for the black side, which we'll talk about later on. I was maybe more thinking for like an anti-Rayleigh tech. If that deck gets really, really popular, you could just Murakamo Sword away like the Buggy and the Boa Hancock before they can use the Boa Hancock effect as a potential option. But this list overall is just really, really solid, and the engine, I think, is really, really solid. It's also quite cheap as well to build from a second-hand market point of view. Like, so many of these cards are either rares or uncommons, and the super rares aren't super, super expensive. The gaps maybe a little bit when compared to Borsalino or Aramaki, but it is certainly a very budget-friendly deck to build. And another one that I am also looking at building at the moment for OP12 as well with Bonnie. Next up, we're going to go to yellow, and we're going to go to Enel. And there's one variation of Enel that is doing very, very well at the moment, and that is the Lucci-like Enel. We mentioned about the Lucci-like Shanks deck earlier on. This isn't that Lucci-like Enel. But I know guys like Merry TCG, who recently just won the Manchester Offline Regionals, he has been working on, with a lot of people as well, a heavy removal-focused Enel deck with things like Hino Bird Zap, Ultra Combat Murmurine, or whatever that card is from OP11 as well, the Arc Maxim to be able to kill stuff like low-cost stuff as well. It's a really interesting take on the deck. But Enel, I've secretly, honestly, been waiting for this deck to show its face again. It had a little bit of a resurgence in EBO2 with the 10-cost super rare that it got given. But now, with this 6-cost secret rare Kuma, this has brought yellow decks, and particularly Enel, back into favor really, really heavily. To be able to have two separate ways to heal yourself, both on play and if your opponent KOs it, it forces them to either just bottom deck it if they're playing blue, or just consistently take and deal with these 7k swings that this Kuma is pushing out turn after turn after turn. This card is very, very good, and it's showing it as well right now with the second-hand market pricing. You can see it's starting to drop a little bit in North America, but in Europe, people are really, really loving this card. And what's not to love? It's got so much capability here. And of course, with you being in yellow, you've got access to so many of these originally strong cards. You've got Katakuris, Yamatos, Aces, Gadatsus, Kikunojo, Capone triggers as well to really, really hamper your opponent. Zeus from OP11, one of the best yellow 2k counters I think that we've gotten in the game, with its counter effect and just ability to KO something and help you out if your opponent's trying to starve you, like they should do against an NL deck. This is a really, really cool leader, and a really, really great leader, and one I think has the potential to at least make top cut at Bologna. I don't know whether it's going to win the thing. Not sure whether it's quite as strong enough, because, like I say, I think Bonnie really, really helps out against the Enel matchup. Shanks as well, especially in this version, to be able to get rid of some of this higher cost things a little bit easier. I'm not 100% sure whether it wins Bologna, but I definitely think that it's one that players need to be watching out and testing for. The last deck maybe might not be as much of a surprise. It was certainly a surprise that it's here, and that we're even talking about this again, but Sakazuki, original OP05 Sakazuki, has been released, has been brought back from the ban and restricted list depths, and is back in contention again. I think this deck is still very, very strong. Yes, we don't have Ice Age, yes, we don't have Moria, yes, we don't have Great Eruption anymore. But we've got Tempest Kick now. We've still got Brooks and Jax. We've got 10 cost Kuzan that a lot of people are running. We've got so many of the core original tools, Rebecca, Hina, Lucci. We've got this 2 cost Uta, which in Lucci enough was a pain to deal with. This in Sakazuki could just be absolutely ridiculous with the amount of recycling that you are doing in this deck. I think a lot of people still need to worry about Sakazuki. I know there's been quite a lot of discussion saying that, I don't think Sakazuki's as good now as it was when it was at the height of its heyday during the OP05, OP06 meta, after it got banned. Or before it got banned, I should say. But I still think that there are so many good applications for this deck. The Duel Leader ability to filter into the things you need, filter out the things that you want in trash to be able to generate with your Rebecca Hina Lucci combo, and that -1 inherently on the leader ability as well, not having to trash cards from the top of the deck like you would with a mono black Lucci list. I think Sakazuki is still a deck that a lot of people need to worry about, and I think it's going to be a really big contender. Obviously, the question will be is whether the format ends up being too fast for the deck. That we will have to wait and see. We've obviously touched on Rayleigh very briefly. Inherently, that is going to be a very fast deck. It's mono red aggro. And Zoro, it looks like, has the capability to be quite quick as well. My only issue with the Zoro matchup is that if you're attacking into characters to get the most out of the leader ability, well, you're putting those characters in the trash, which Sakazuki is totally fine with, because for the most part, they could just be brought back with Rebecca. And the big things that you want to protect, say like Jack and like Kuzan, they're 8 and 10k base as it is. So the 8,000 power that the Zoro leader is swinging into can just be countered away quite easily with things like Suru's, Tashigi's, and Bartolomeo's, or even Brooks that we're not wanting to use at this time. So I think Sakazuki is going to be a really big deck for contention. I think it's going to make at least top 8 in Bologna, maybe even top 4, depending on what a lot of people play. Obviously, I think Zoro's going to be very popular. Rayleigh might not be as popular as what was initially expected with the Sakazuki ban restriction being lifted, because a lot of people might be fearing the deck. But I definitely think that this is going to be top 8 at the very least, in my opinion. What's going to win the thing? I think it is going to be green, and I do think that Jewelry Bonnie might do it. I think that green has got a massive wave of support, obviously with this Mihawk blocker, which is just an unbelievable card. Essentially, ignore the 8 cost that's printed on the card. It's a 4 cost, because you reactivate 4 of the Don. It's a ridiculous card, absolutely unbelievable. Shanks is a really interesting one. I think that there will be maybe one in top cut, depending on player counts and stuff like that. It'll either be top 16 or top 32. There might be one that squeaks through. I'm not sure if a Kuzan will squeak through. Not sure whether it's quite strong enough. If it's top 32, then it might. If it's top 16, I think it will just bubble out. But I'm more than happy to see a Kuzan bubble in. A Nell, I think, will be a similar situation to Kuzan. I think that if it's top 32, there'll be 1 or 2 that might drop in. Probably more focused on the heavy removal package than this sort of traditional mono yellow good stuff deck that we're seeing here as the example list. But we have this weekend to wait and see exactly how it's going to shape up. All I know is that I am very excited to see what happens at Bologna this weekend, and I hope that you are too. That just means there's one thing left to do, and let's turn it over to you guys. What do you think about the OP12 plus ban list format? Who's going to be on top? Who are going to be the sneaky decks that we haven't talked about in this video? And what decks do you think that maybe are getting a little more hype than they necessarily deserve? While you're down there as well, if you did enjoy this video, please do consider dropping a like rating onto it. Subscribe to the channel as well for more One Piece card game and other TCG related content. It's going to be a great format, obviously, going into OP12. We're going to have gameplay videos as well on the channel from the Voyage Diary series and others as well. I do want to incorporate a little bit more sim gameplay into my content on both YouTube and onto Twitch as well. Yes, I do promise the Twitch is coming. It is going to happen at some point. I'm just trying to figure things out logistically. I still need to buy a second monitor as well so I can see chat and things like that nice and easily. But that's going to be an issue. That's going to be a question for later. All those links will be in my link tree as well at the top of the description. And that will conclude this video for today. So thank you so much for watching it. I hope you have enjoyed it. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Goodbye for now.